Hey everyone, how we doing today? This is James Sweeney, aka SplitSuit, and welcome back to another video. And as part of the Ask SplitSuit a Question series, a bunch of people asked great questions, and today's question comes from Justin V. And he says, generally, it seems bad to open limp and limp weak hands like suited kings and suited queens, especially suited aces, in a very early position. What about extremely passive 1-2 no limit live games with calling stations? Should one adjust making a mistake by limping to exploit the tendencies of bad players? Thanks. So Justin, that's a great question, and one of the big things that we need to keep in mind is why we generally don't open limp. So once we understand that, then we can understand situations where open limping makes more sense and could actually be a better play. So we normally don't open limp because one, it's a very weak passive thing, and normally we want to be very aggressive. And one of the other things that open limping does is it opens you up for people isolating you. So you limp, someone raises and smashes you and puts you in a very uncomfortable situation. Now, if you're open limping with a very, very predictable range, say suited connectors, small pairs, that sort of thing, it's really, really easy for someone to isolate you and beat you because your ranges are very, very, very face up. It's very difficult to balance that appropriately. And it's even difficult to balance it if you're going to try to do like a limp re-raising strategy, or if you're going to try to like limp aces to be tricky. Like typically it's very, very difficult to balance that. So typically it's not going to be something that we want to be doing a lot of the time because we don't want to put ourselves in a situation where we're making a predictable action with a predictable range and allowing players to aggress us very, very easily. This is something that we definitely want to avoid in our game. So to answer your question, when would be an appropriate time to consider doing this, and would like a 1-2 passive live game be that appropriate situation? I might start open limping in games where my raising isn't really doing anything. Say I would raise with pocket fours and still end up getting 5 or 6 callers and wouldn't really be able to bluff continuation bet in that pot. And I also thought that if I were to limp, that I wouldn't get isolated, right? So like a really, really passive game where people are only really preflop raising with super big hands, limping everything else behind, or just generally not fighting and contending for that isolation situation. If that's what's going on in your game and that's the exact dynamic, I don't mind open limping things like small pairs and suited connectors that I really need to get involved with, even from early position. Now, it's still not something that I want to be doing a ton of, and oftentimes I don't find this dynamic is always present, even in 1-2 games. But if it is there and you know that you can limp and you know you're not going to get punished for it and you still need to be able to see the pot and you know that raising isn't really going to do what you want it to do, this could easily be a way to get involved in pots and get involved with weak players without raising and putting yourself in a situation where you really have to smash the board anyway to do anything. Now, one last little thing that I want to throw in here just to make sure I'm clarifying and answering as best as possible is you mentioned early position specifically in your question. Now, when I'm doing it from here, even if I do deem this a good situation to start doing some open limping, traditionally, small pairs, suited connectors that I need to get involved with, those will be considered part of my open limping range. But I'm usually not going to go crazy here, right? I'm still not going to throw things like King 4 suited and Queen 8 suited typically into this range, and even things like Ace 6 suited I'm typically not going to, unless there's like a tremendous amount of stack depth or like a super, super real reason that I need to do it. Typically, I still don't want to because I'm going to be out of position going post-flop, and oftentimes you assume that in a game like this you're going to be out of position in a very multi-way pot, and that can be very tricky. So keep that in mind. You don't want to be just open limping like anything that's suited and like looks to be sort of playable like 5-6 off or anything like that. You still want to be pretty damn selective here, but there are some situations and again in some dynamics where this can be okay. So Justin, thanks for the great question, and if you or anyone else has a poker related hand or question, feel free to leave it on our Google Plus page. Leave a link for that in the description box, and also please make sure to like and subscribe if you're enjoying this type of video. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to let me know. Otherwise, good luck out there and happy grinding.